A few months ago, when Kenya was going through their general elections, and my English teacher made a bold statement that has changed the way I see the political world forever. He said something along the lines of how, if he was president, he'd make us, his students, his ministers and personal advisors. Now at first, I remember thinking, who in their right mind would make a bunch of 16-year-olds ministers? I mean, these are people in the government who handle entire departments, people who make delicate decisions that affect our daily lives as citizens on almost a daily basis. But as the days passed, and the more I thought about what he said, the more it began to make sense to me. I realized that our generation has unique perspective, innovative ideas, and energy that should not be underestimated. And that's why today, I'd like to challenge the setup of African leadership and democracy. Ladies and gentlemen, let's imagine a scenario. 17-year-old Maaher Bhaloo as the Minister for Energy in Zanzibar. The place I call home, the place where my heart lies. Why energy? Because it's something that's always fascinated me. You can read about it online, by the way. But as I was saying, this scenario is a microcosm of what the youth represent in our beautiful continent. Picture this: dynamic and energetic leaders committed to tackling the issues that face our continent head-on. I see an Africa where youth are the driving force of progress, where our democracy and our demography work hand in hand, and where leadership reflects the diversity of our people. However, let's be honest, the reality of African politics today is far from this idyllic vision. Before we continue, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce to you some statistics. Figure 1. Figure 1 is a graph showing us Africa's rapid population growth, represented by that red line. As of today, Africa has the fastest growing population in the world, whose population is expected to double by 2050. Figure 2. As of 2023, Africa's median age, the average age of the population, was 18.8. I'd like you to remember that figure, 18.8, with over 40% of the population being under the age of 14. From the rugged mountains of the north to the sprawling savannas of the east, Africa's diverse landscapes have given rise to a multitude of leaders. President Tebboune of Algeria, age 77 years, from the north of Africa. President Mnangagwa of Zimbabwe, age 80 years, from the south of Africa. President Paul Biya of Cameroon, age 90 years, ladies and gentlemen, 90, from the central and west of Africa. President Yoweri Museveni of Uganda, age 78 years, from East Africa, our neighbors. And ladies and gentlemen, I could go on and on. An example of 4 different presidents from the 4 different points of the compass. As of 2017, over 2/5 of African leaders were over the age of 70. The median age of these leaders, 65. Now, I'd ask you to remember a figure, 18.8. 65 minus 18.8 is 46.2. That's a 46.2-year age difference between our population and our leaders. Think about that. Now, let me tell you what I think. I believe, as Africa, we're headed in the right direction. But every time we take 1 step forward, take 2 steps backwards. Every time we take one step forward, we take 2 steps backwards. You see, over recent years, we've seen a positive development in the idea of democracy across all African countries. The first step forward. However, how many of these democracies are fully functional? For example, Kenya. We've seen a positive development in the idea of democracy. They've been able to strengthen the independence of the judiciary, make constitutional reforms, and hold peaceful elections, as witnessed in 2022. But is their democracy fully functional? Are African democracies fully functional? Do they promote transparency, respect basic human rights, encourage freedom of speech? I believe very few do that. And that's our first step backwards. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm no doctor. Who am I kidding? I'm not even done with high school. But today, I've diagnosed Africa with big man syndrome. Because despite having what we call democracies, none of these democracies reflect our people. None of these democracies reflect our demography. Now, you must be asking yourself, what is big man syndrome? In layman's language, it's big old men monopolizing African leadership, running out of ideas to the challenges we're facing, and not effectively being able to cater to the needs of the current generation. Now, this is just not a matter of fairness. It's a matter of practicality. If we want to build a thriving Africa for the future generations to come, we need leaders who understand the challenges we're facing, who can come up with creative solutions to these challenges. We need leaders who can bridge the gap between the old and the young and unite our diverse communities under one common vision. Now, do not get me wrong. I'm not saying we do not need these elderly leaders. In fact, where I'm from, there's a famous proverb in Kiswahili where we say, Penye, wazee, haliharibiki, neno. That implies elderly wise people give good advice. Of course, I do understand that there's a reason why we have an age flow to be a president, a minister, a member of parliament. Elderly people have a certain level of maturity, experience that enable them to make sound decisions. And that's when we as youth should step in to grab that opportunity, to learn from their experience and their wisdom. I'm not saying we should make a 14-year-old a minister or an 18-year-old a president. No. But rather, I'm suggesting the nurturing of these young leaders and the cooperation between the young and the old. I'll give you guys an example of my own. In October 2022, I was invited to be the youngest guest speaker at the Maalim Seif Legacy Conference. For those who know their politics and their history, they know the importance Maalim Seif has played, the pivotal role in shaping African politics today. I was invited to speak about the education system in Zanzibar, the strengths, the weaknesses, and the areas of improvement, having studied in over 3 different countries. I presented my talk in front of international ambassadors, ministers, people from the private sector, government officials, and the local community. Even NGOs, for a matter of fact. And people were so impressed with what I had proposed, my talk. I had comments coming in from ministers saying that that's a future leader right there. We were impressed with what you said. We value ideas. And the reason I'm telling you this story today is to show you the value of youth and their ideas, if given the opportunity. Africa is in a representation crisis. A representation crisis. Africa's largest demographic is the most underrepresented in decision-making organs. And what we fail to understand is that for a leadership to thrive and for leadership to be responsive, For democracy to be responsive, inclusion is non-negotiable. Young people bring fresh perspectives that can help drive innovation and creativity. As they have grown up in a world that's so different from those of their predecessors, they often have a better understanding of the latest trends and technologies that can be leveraged to solve problems. Youth are the key to a sustainable future. Youth are the vehicle of positive change. By investing in the next generation of leaders, we're investing in the long-term health and prosperities of our society. Young people can learn from the wisdom and experience of their elders, but also challenge established norms that are crucial for building a vibrant, inclusive, and functioning democracy. Ladies and gentlemen, what's the cure to big man syndrome? What's the remedy to big man syndrome? What should we do moving forward? Number one, we need to promote intergenerational dialogue and collaboration between our young leaders and our elderly leaders. Let us create pathways for our young leaders to access leadership positions, whether it's through mentorships, internships, or any other initiatives. One that I can think of off the top of my head right now would be to use the African Union. African Union can rally African leaders and set a quota for the number of youth that should be involved in the decision-making organs. And for those who are averse to quota systems because of the perception of mediocrity, it's crucial for me to emphasize that only youth who are capable and proficient should be given the opportunity to lead. This will make African governments proactive, ready to come up with solutions to the challenges we're facing. Number two, we need to invest in education and skills training for our youth so that they succeed in the rapidly changing world. As they say, education is the key to success. Only through education will we be able to empower our youth. We'll be able to empower them to access these leadership positions, to make their voices heard, to ensure that our leadership and our governance systems reflect the many voices of our people. Most importantly, we need to cultivate a culture of civic engagement. We need to empower our youth to stand up, make their voices heard. We need to make them hold the leaders accountable for their actions so that they can shape the future of their communities and nations. We need to break down the barriers that prevent youth from accessing these leadership positions, whether it's through a lack of confidence, age restriction, or simply a lack of information. They say the best way to learn is to do. Similarly, the best way to learn to lead is to lead. If African governments want to create a sustainable generation of leaders, they must give young individuals the opportunity to lead. Only then will we be able to see the capabilities of these young leaders. And this will enable them to access even higher positions in the government. Ladies and gentlemen, only through giving our youth the opportunity to rise up to the occasion is when we'll be able to see the potential of our youth. Our youth are made up with so much intellect, so many ideas, that's being underestimated right now by our governance systems. And that's something we have to change. It's time for African youth to stand up and demand a fair share in policy making, law making, and decision making organs in our governance systems. It's time to give the continent that carries the hope of the world's future a future that aligns with the hope and the aspirations of its young population. It's time for us to rise to the occasion and break free from the shackles of big man syndrome. We have the energy, we have the synergy, and we have the innovative ideas. And we just need a platform. As for me, I may not be the president or be in the government of any African country, at least not yet. But I am committed to using my voice in creating a better future